Hello, this is the Hovering Light. I'm Mary. I give a conservative perspective about the world around me. Feedback is immensely important. Feel free to reach out to me. Two ways to do this is email and comments on YouTube is greatly appreciated. Word of mouth is greatly appreciated. And you want to spread the word? Go ahead and do that. All you got to do is say, hey, the Hovering Light. Let them know. Talk about it. All right. So, on to the topic of choice here. Alright. So, this is the end of me speaking about advertisement and its influence. So, what I'm going to focus in on is a really good book that I found about advertisement the first 200 years. Alright, so let's dive into it. Alright, so the book in itself is entitled Advertising in America, the First 200 Years. And it is the source I will provide for you to find the book in this episode. So, Charles Goodrum and Helen Darlinkle, doing my best to enunciate that pretty well there. They are the authors of this book, and they did a really good job with the aspects of first starting out, which I appreciate books that do that. They start out, they give you the overall, a lot of information all at once about everything, the survey, right? And then as the book goes on, it goes into specifics, right? So I really appreciate that. And so in the beginning, when I was reading, these are the points that I've taken away from it and showcasing to all of you and little pieces as the themes leading up to this book. Alright, so here's what I find. I find it quite interesting, for one, where these aspects here, okay? So, there was a quote in the book, specifically on page 7, which is interesting. So, the whole Gloria Steinem and everything with her, and then what she did with her magazine and everything, the whole aspects of Gloria Steinem, women like her, and the feminist movement and all this. And there's a quote used that says that the aspects, and this goes in the overall visual ideas about, does advertisement work when it comes to showcasing concepts here as far as body image. Now, it's saying that looking at women's body images, comparing the two, the aspects of that, and talking about Gloria Steinem saying, now I'm paraphrasing, so saying along the lines of the same concepts that women view the aspects of body and image differently from men. And then she was used because Gloria Steinem in itself, was the advocacy of that, women are more than products, women are more than what a man perceives her to be, right? And so I find that quite interesting, right? And here's why I find it quite interesting. Okay, so for those who are new or those who have listened to me for quite some time, I say this. Now, and the issue with feminism here and, placing all these negative connotations with the aspects of, female body image or never measuring up enough or never being enough, or you don't need somebody to tell you your worth. It's all housed in something that is having the mentality that people are innately bad. Now, there are people out in this world that are like that, and are some very cruel people, and it's just, just really masochistic, sycophant, weird, deviant people, right? But when you hold on to the worldview of saying that, okay, well, placing also placing all these expectations on the advertisers to say, hey, look, if you want, women like Gloria Steinem, now I'm just merely speaking from my point of view about everything on this. Hey, look, if you think that you're going to get the man in your dreams because of these advertisers or pushing these lies to you, well, you're wrong, And that's like, well, how about, having the ideas that advertisement is a tool into the aspects of what we value in our culture, and just go from there. And so these are essentially the takeaways that I gathered, and I am that's initially sink into me. All right, and here's why. So now I'm still sticking on to the survey part of the book, and then I'm going to go into the specifics that I found quite interesting, right? All right, so I found it quite interesting because they found a actual flyer from England that was advertising, and it was in Old English, and it is, kind of hard to understand because, it's Old English, but it was very matter of fact. Hey, we're selling this. Here you go. You get what you get. No thrills, no kind of, feats or anything else to not lure you in, but to draw your attention and to gather your attention. It wasn't anything like that. It was just very, very straight to the point, translucent. If you want this, here's what it is. Here's what you need to do. Go get it. And so that is a benchmark into the overall aspects of how advertisement implemented itself into our culture, American culture, and then you can say globally too, as of today. All right, so, and then moving on to, and I'll get back to that with that, but early on, and I've the slice of life and the vignettes in which they were talking about here. And I find it quite interesting, specifically, when you get into the 30s and so forth, people now advertisement was going on well before then, but they were really crafting their own with the aspects of the slice of life and the vignettes and the aspects of emotional pull when it comes to product and the necessity of it. And so insurance companies They had a lot of good examples of that. I would say go to page 9. Let's see. Well, I'll go back to page 8, but page 9, and then on some on page 10 around that era. All right, around those pages here, and they showcase a lot of different insurance companies. Saying, hey, which was a really, and as I said, advertisement is a reflection of culture and the historical value of what people are experiencing at that time. So they showcase and they say, well, hey, this could have all been prevented if if they would have planned better with the insurance. And that was a lot of real world implications, because at that time, especially in the 1930s, that was, the reality situation, families being displaced or not being able to stick together when a loved one passes, And that's really influential in the aspects of how people at that time viewed themselves when it comes to responsibilities too. Because, the 1930s was centered around the aspects of the Great Depression, right? And so with the Great Depression, I'm not going to go into, no, that's not the point of me. No, it was this episode giving a history lesson, but, people saw the ramifications and the problems and the consequences of what happens when you make the choices you make, bad or what have you, and trying to restore that and build that back up. And then the advertisers knew that, so they employed on that. Now, going back to page 8, which I find very interesting. So they go in and they say, well, different generations, then and now, they are hold on just a minute. Now this book was, but I will link everything, made in the 90s or so, the early 90s or so, right? So I'll get to that. But it was very true around this time when this book was released and all of this around those times. That was really prevalent for the notion that you go in with this whole idea of really not trusting what advertising advertising is saying to you. It's pretty much vying for your attention and using different tactics in order to get there, right? Which I can say, for the most part, yes and no. And because, what are we doing here? It's one of those things where, there's a happy medium where, okay, you take what you hear and see when it comes to advertising with a grain of salt. But at the same time, the brand and the durability is what speaks a lot. And I think that's is what overall is a selling point for products to stay on the market and thrive on the free marketing system here, or to get a lot of attention with advertising. So, okay, there's that. All right, so let's mosey on. All right, so Civil War. Now, the Civil War means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. Some people just want to refer to hyper focus on the fact that it just so happened the Civil War was centered around the aspects of race when it comes to slavery and the territories being divided over that and everything all with that. But beyond this, the Civil War was a really good benchmark test and a litmus test for the aspects of the way in which advertisement in itself was thought about and implemented in American culture. Now, here's why. So, reading on into it, it was the aspects of, there was essentially, according to the source, and there is a lot of different evidence about this, that it was a lot of surplus going on. The aspects of being able to find more, do more, it was really more and more evidence in America, and the aspects of being able to have more of a ready supply of something, and being more the aspects of wanting things to be more domesticated, and everything else was very much evidently documented. All right, and so newspapers took notice of this, right? Because at the time, newspapers were were valued like gold, because you got all your information from newspapers. You got to be able to understand what was going on, and so advertisers, people, businesses understood the aspects of showcasing what you want to showcase through the means of the media, which was newspapers at the time. Okay, and so here we go into that. All right, so one of the I would say the Chicago Daily Tribune, was when I was reading into this, really set a precedent in the aspects of, trying to get all the movable pieces together with it. All right, so here we go. All right, so along the lines of this is they set up the system where you could. All right, so by the time 1875 came around, it was set up to where ads were more concise in which they were presented. And so, and the way it was easily understood and very uniform in which it was understood, because of the aspects that at that time there still wasn't a lot of people who were literate, right? So that had to be done. Now that case in point, as a monkey ignorance now, and it's up to further debate, unfortunately. But sometimes It's one of those things. One of those aspects of the reality of life is, to gain something, to lose something, but you still need to, merge the two together and not let something overpower. So what I mean by this is the aspects of technology and how it's viewed in our lifetime, our generation. Some say that people are more illiterate now than ever before because you don't have to, necessarily have the means of working, really doing a lot of due diligent things in order to express your point. It's very, hey, what's the shortcut to doing something, and people lose the adaptability to be able to read things concisely or get straight to the point when you're looking at something and all of this. But in this case, people actually were still, that literacy was still an issue. All right, so as I said, it was more concise, but also with the prices, was more concise too. So let me I'm getting into the specifics with that. So it's was that you could buy an ad by the day for 50 cents or for 2 weeks, right? So, and then for $2.50, 2 days, which would be $2.50, would at that time would equate to 2 days paid for a working man. And also on top of that no ad could run longer than the 2 weeks, right? So, this was so with the New York Herald, right? This was so that the aspects of unfair advantage wouldn't happen, right? Where everyone was pretty much had fair play with even the working man in itself, and y'all had fair play in what they wanted to advertise. But they found it quite interesting that people diverted into two different directions. Now here's this. Now, they either were selling the same kind of goods over and over again and simply reminded the reader of their existence, or the idea of catchphrases came out with the advertising. Because if you use, catchphrases, if you use something to really grab the attention that's very creative, hey, then you got something, right? You got the viewer's attention to really pay attention, to really want to look at your product and see what it is. And versus when you see, it's the same thing over and over again, over and over again, over and over again. Now, starting with this because that in itself, hey, that sets the, like I said in the beginning, the benchmark for which we are looking at advertisement in the aspects of modern advertisement as of now, as of today, as of how it flows. That's really true. There's a lot of various examples of how that works, of how you can see that, and so with that said, let's move on and talk more. Okay, so advertisement agencies, right? Excuse me, sorry about that. Now, advertisement agencies. It was quite interesting, still with the aspects of how newspapers, they understood, in which, according to the source, they understood, where, they could get the people and they could get the selling point. But what they couldn't quite get right is how to be the movable piece to figure out how to get all of that together all in one space. And so, people at that time were pretty much running around trying to figure out how to get everything together concisely with advertising and bringing it to the masses. So they propose that because of this, the media, now known as legacy media, evolved itself to be their wheelhouse, or I guess you can think of it kind of the shell here, in order for advertisers to place their agendas onto or place their products onto. So they proposed the idea to where it be news organizations, where it be television organizations, even movies, with this question. Now, are these outlets merely here to inform you, or are they merely here to entertain you, or is it another option where there's hidden agendas, where they just are the houses or the, I guess you get a walking post here to sell you something. And that's quite interesting when you delve into that perspective about news, media, and so forth. So that begs the question to say, your favorite programming or your favorite news outlet, do they really, and it also proposes the idea of what's real, what's not, what's objective, and then also along the lines of you as a viewer, you as a consumer, and the power of knowledge and how that is implemented into how people maneuver themselves in the world. There's something to be said to take things with face value and to really do the due diligence. Now, that's easier said than done. People, call for things like that. But it's one of those things where, when you take the time to do it, it really opens a lot of doors for you. So that to find out, when you find it out, does this particular news organization, does this particular television show, movie, what have you, well, what are they doing? Are they really, there to inform you? Or are they really there to entertain you entertain you in the way into where selling you a product in which the advertisers have stake and hold and really manipulating the storyline, right? And so, really, 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 really prevalent examples of that is, when you get in the aspects of a lot of cable news outlets, okay? Now, both sides, right? And this idea of left versus right, that in itself is really problematic, because I say this because there is the world is complicated, okay? And it's far better to have the viewpoint of what is the facts of the situation. Like, I want to hear from this point of view, I want to hear from that point of view, and then here you go, make a decision for yourself. Also, with the aspects of accountability and implementing change, when you see the aspects of news organizations or news outlets, we have a story to run, but we only want to run stories that we know will grant a lot of viewership and ratings. What's the ratings? That's a pretty good indicator. Maybe they're not so much for you. And then also, when you go into the aspects of entertainment, when they keep presenting a idea, now with entertainment, for the most part, it's supposed to be the vehicle in which, dispensing reality. It's supposed to be kick back and relax. But when you see a lot of entertainment that's trying to push very strange agendas that do not go with the aspects of which we see in nature, or which we, all of these things, it really begs the question about the aspects of what's the underlying agenda for that, right? And so presenting this book, presenting that idea that, how influential advertising can be when it comes to these issues, that's very interesting, because it makes your mind wonder and go down that road of saying, well, how important is advertising really? So let's go on to that. All right, so here we go. Now, when the World War started, first with World War I, and then implementing with World War II, that changed the aspects and the concepts of how advertisement was very prevalent, in which women were showcased and addressed into marketing to them. Because during this time, the men were all out fighting wars, and the women had to be there holding the fort down. Now, this meant that women were asked, hey, you gotta, excuse me, hey, you gotta support our troops at home. You gotta support our troops while you're still at home. So that meant you gotta go out in the workforce, all right? So that's why the Industrial Revolution was very interesting and set up a lot of transitions in which we see in the workplace and in the workflow and everything else. and then how things were changed and implement about how work weeks were thought about, and how, they were showcased. How work and work-life balance was thought about in people's lives when it comes to that. All right, so proposed in the book that now, hey, these women, they have the power to go out and buy, and so we are going to inform them and show the aspects of how lucrative that can be when with these certain concepts and how it's advertised to you. All right. And so what they found was that most of the time when advertising to women versus advertising to men is quite different. Now, they found that when, for instance, it comes to a lot of different subject matters, they find out women tend to want the what is the storyline behind this? Like, you think of it in this concept here of women want to imagine the possibility of what it could be or what something is, versus with men, it's they found that it's very, get at point A to point B, sort of that, and there's not really the whole aspects of imagining, what it is, or and then relay that to how influencers and then the whole concept of being an influencer, as a career is not what it used to be, but was, very prevalent, because the whole attitude and the notion that there's going to be a lot of young women, there's going to be a lot of women who, buy into that, and then girls, the aspects of imagining the possibilities of what can be if you just have a certain lifestyle. Okay, and so and so for a while, and that was pretty much the tactic in which was used in the aspects of presenting and showcasing advertisement to the masses. It was very much heavily, relied on the buying power of women. And particularly, a really good example of that is soaps. All right. The radio. Radio is another mean in which advertisers present themselves fully in the aspects of influencing something. Soaps are all, the whole reason why they are what they are is because of advertising. Because they found that if I have these little vignettes that goes with the aspects of why soaps are needed, then women are, specifically the hour in which these vignettes were heard on radio, on the radio shows back in the day, and around the time, like the 20s, the 30s, so forth. They were presented in a way in which they understood that, where you could do I wouldn't say it's menial tasks, but tasks that are expected for the mom, the wife, to do, cleaning up, everything, around the house. And she could still actively understand the story plot. And they called it soaps, because of the products that were sponsoring it. Because again, which is really quite, I just think it's just interesting and funny at the same time. The product companies were soap manufacturers that were sponsoring these slice of life vignettes. So when you see, and then when the television was invented, the transition was an easy transition because that was a proprietor. Because that was where the money, a lot of money could be made with soaps because, that's how they started their legacy. They with advertisers sponsoring these slice of life, one long big giant ad vignettes. That's what they were, but they presented, as dramatic situations that would help with the aspects of escaping, everyday life, here. And then that was really prevalent, going on with the historical territory that is with that time. Yeah. Not knocking it, I think I find it, I find that quite interesting how that just, merges itself into everything. All right, so packaging. Okay, now packaging and the grocer. Now, it was a laborious task to where, there's a lot of movable pieces again with the aspects of the newspaper. And so, in order to cut that short, right, that's where the idea of merging groceries together with advertising too, and with advertising companies too, merging in with grocers instead of the grocers. Hey, we got to go out. We got to do this. Back from what I understand. This is what I understand. Going back, go out and get them. Go out. When, getting themselves together and moving that along to where the advertisers, okay, we'll come to you. And then, hold on just a minute. Yeah. It's still not because we have to figure out what. Hold on. I'll be right back, okay? All right, let's delve right back into it. Okay. All right, so like I was saying with packaging, right? And so, and that's why we have the aspects, from what I understand, what I gathered when I was reading the book, why the concepts of labeling and making sure something is presented in a certain way really sets up that idea of the way that something presented, is that what is in itself got the attention of the consumer, or is it actually the product itself? Because if I'm not mistaken, it takes a lot. It's when the grocer in itself gets all of the products that is needed, they sit a while, and then they decide what label goes here, what label goes there, and in order to understand, this is this our generic brand versus, this is the name brand and so forth. And it also begs the question of the aspects of, is it the same thing or what's that about, right? And so there's that. And then along the lines of the aspects of the medical ads here. They talk about medical ads in a very interesting way, and that's along the lines of pages 24 to 27. And so the way that the medical ads were presented early on, they were already at having that, that slick, snake oil salesman, unfortunately, like you are tugging heavily on the emotions. And so I find that quite interesting with the aspects of how medical ads are very prevalent in America versus you don't really see that a lot in other parts of the world. Well, I mean, I don't know, so, more modernized parts of the world that aren't, still third world. There you go, more metropolitan. Let's say that, right? Because in itself, when you get into the here's the issues that I have with that, and then also knowing the aspects of how it started, where it was always pulling towards tugging the emotions of something, with showcasing what is needed, right? But at the time, it makes a whole lot of sense because of during the latter part of the 19th century, early part of the 19th century, and so forth. You needed stuff like that because there was a lot of people who were really, having a lot of different ailments, and people trying to figure everything out. And then modern medicine was trying to figure out, trying to change with the times and to be out there. I can see it makes a lot of sense because it was kind of, sort of like a guideline to get the information out, but at the same time using the emotion to get the information out. I don't know. Yeah, you shouldn't do that. So here's the issue that I have, especially now, when we see ads, and then back when SNL was still, pretty funny, they made fun of it with the aspects of, this is supposed to be this wonder drug that will help and cure all and do all and be all. But why is all these hindrance, it doesn't really, when you hear all these hindrance side effects, and it said, but it still has this going on, this notion of slice of life concept, which is very, very pivotal to see in the different sort of themes and elements that they use, to in advertising, Oh well, and show some if they use animation, or sometimes animation, but most of the time people walking around being all happy, and having some, I'm being getchy right now, but happy-go-lucky, and just having like a really uplifting song in my background saying nothing beats everything, and then everything's free flowing, But bottom line is that's something that should be the responsibility between, guess what, the doctor and the patient, and that's really, something to be said about the aspects of how, where are the boundaries and everything else when it comes about how advertisement is implemented into American culture. Especially too, on top of that too, when we get into education, right? And so, and how that is implemented and advertised too. That's something that you should not really be doing, because if you feel the need that you have to advertise look at us, our university is the best because of Y, X, Y, and Z. Is it? Does it have merit? Is it because, you know, okay, I see education as this. You know, education is another tool in order to implement success. Now, success is, and how you get there is not, it shouldn't be something that's uniform, okay? Now, people, I say that it's far more valuable for you to have actual skills and to versus anything else, right? And you should use education as a means to improve yourself and to improve and to also improve and help others. Now, when you merely have education because somebody told you to do it, or you don't have any set goals, you don't really know what your value is or what you can do, that's a problem. Or in the aspects of your degree is not valuable to anybody, or is not really is just not productive to society, then your attitude starts to conflate to compensate for it. That's a problem within itself. So I think that you should, when it comes to those subject matters, don't just no. All right, so looking at advertising as far as okay. That's kind of okay. Okay. Now, I am going to go into the aspects of copywriting, okay, and the aspects of brand and brand sustainability. Now, copywriting really started to come into its own, especially when we get into the aspects of everything when it comes to that, with if I'm not mistaken, in the years of like the 20s and so forth, especially when the aspects of catalog started to come out, right? And then Sears, unfortunately, it used to be just the beacon for that, and the way and the way in which catchphrases were really presented and used, in which products were showcased, was really something else. And on top of that, the Saturday Evening Post, okay? Saturday Evening Post was really at the forefront of showcasing that whole idea emerging vignette slice of life. The aspects of visually showcasing something that's very appealing, and the aspects of copyrights, the copywriting, and the way that the words flow together to where it was a piece of art and people will really pay attention and give a lot of merit and value to advertising. So I think that's something to be said about that. That's pretty much what I got about that. All right, so now let's go into the aspects of how, companies evolve and change in over time, and its implementing itself, and to evolving, and to our the cultural value that advertising has on our society, specifically American culture. All right, so Betty Crocker is a really good example of that. Okay, so Betty Crocker was all corporately done. Even Betty Crocker herself is a figment, right? It was all came up from the concepts and ideas of the business owners of the Crocker Company. And so they understood the very real implications of, being a company that puts customer first and that they're accessible, they're likable, right? And so they essentially set them up like Dear Abby, where they would answer questions and all of these things. And so to get the viability of how the necessity of the product, and I will say this, like how ease and comfort that product is, because in this terms of for a company to come out before and then. So before a company like Betty Crocker came out, which myself, I love and I enjoy cooking and baking and all these things by scratch for my family. I just love it. I think it is because I'm showing my love for them. Now that's nice to also have the convenience when you don't, because it takes a whole lot of work, right? And it takes a whole lot of time too. And when you don't have that much time and you got a lot of stuff going on, the convenience of having a company that understands that already has ready-made products for you to just, hey, you instantly want to make a cake? Here you go. All you need is this box of ingredients that's already pre-made for you to do so. Want to make some cookies right quick for your family, for your for the class or for your child's school project or something. Hey, this is already easily made. All you gotta do is pop it in, put it in the oven. Hey, convenience. Because that is what was very what can be really good about the aspects of advertising, and what is the staying power with a lot of different companies that understand that convenience really matters, especially when it comes to the involvement of cultures and generations that stick with the times. Now, Betty Crocker is one of those companies that have done that, because even the aspects of how the image of Betty Crocker looked over time, it has changed. It did change because it was, all right, in the 30s, before, around that time. Now, I'm starting with that. And then she looked, she started out, she looked just like a homemaker and everything else. And it started to evolve to where by the time 1986 came around and rolled around, and then what you see today, a woman of the world, she's out in the job market. She's got things to do. She's getting that balance together with work and family. And that was very prevalent in the aspects of, making sure that Betty Crocker is on the character and the company have their pulse on the culture and be self-aware with the times that are changing, because that in itself, I didn't mean to sound like a Bob Dylan song, but that in itself is a concept in which, I think advertisers really stay prevalent. They keep up with the times, but they're not convoluted in their messaging. and the aspects of so now going back, y'all can if you are in if you are wanting to. Now this goes along the lines of a case in point of how also on top going back to slice of life and vignettes and this whole concept of visualizing and influencing a lifestyle. Brick girls in the brand history of it, that is talked about in this book. So this company here showcased a lot of young women, young girls, and it was all vignettes about the aspects of if you're a brick girl, you have it assumes this sort of persona, and a lot of very famous actresses were showcased onto this. And it was also this question that was presented in the book: is that where they crossed the boundaries of taking advantage of, presenting these aspects of heavily focusing on, we want to influence you more than what the product can actually do. And that also begs the question too about the aspects of how influence culture is now in on everything as far as when it comes to the social media and stuff like that as of today. So case in point, and examples of famous actresses are like Brooke Shields, Kim Basinger, Sybil Shepherd, things like that. Like younger generation might not know who they are, but pretty much it's well understood who these women are. And so that there's that if you're interested. And then William Burbach and David Ogilvy. Now they were very interesting because they were advertising people, and they set the precedent of the aspects of in which visually where to go and how to view ads and the creativity of ads of that. And a really good example of that is, if I'm not mistaken, David Ogilvy. Ogilvy was behind the Volkswagen ads back in the day, in the 50s and 60s, where it was a Volkswagen that simply said lemon, and then that evokes a sort of emotion, and to the aspects of how especially at the time, how there's a lot of stuff going on to where automotive, the automobile and the culture and the value of vehicles were very accessible and very personable to, which it is now, but really with the aspects of how people viewed car salesmen and everything else about the buying power of cars and wanting that value for your vehicle. And so William Berkman was along the lines of saying overall with the social, a little bit of social awareness, but more story oriented, presenting that. All right, so going on with the aspects of when with staying power, when we'll get with Quaker Oats, when we'll get with grape nuts, when we get with Campbell soups, okay, when we get with Ivory soap, when we get with Gillette's, all of these are very prevalent and well known companies. And then Kodak, can't forget Kodak. Now, even though Kodak went into bankruptcy and all this kind of stuff, because I think it went into bankruptcy because of the aspects of the and trying to, keep up and merge with the times, but falling short, not being able to get that quite right with the aspects of digitizing film and no longer needing film with photography, because let me go back to Eastman Kodak in itself. All right, that's why and I'll get back to all these other brands, right? That's why he created the company. He created a company because he saw where the issues were, and that's what's so great. And that's why I think it's really good to uphold and continue to put in the foreground and make it more normalized, where stories like this are more and more mainstream, because he is a quintessential attitude and idea of what makes America so prevalent and wonderful. Now he saw a need. And he saw a problem, and he took the due diligence to fix that problem, and he made his success from that. Now he saw how laborious, he saw how it wasn't more the better word choice here. It just wasn't very efficient in the way things were going on as far as photography. Now, people understood photography in his time, when it comes to everything, when he started the company. But the problem is that, it was so many different movable pieces. Okay? But he said, okay, let's go and capitalize. Let me go and capitalize on the aspects of how making the process of developing the film that the images are on a lot easier. And so that's how he got his success. All right, so let's go back to these other companies, and I'm gonna add on to some more companies. Now, like what I said, brand loyalty, brand staying power. Now, with the cereal companies, especially with Quaker Oat, is a really good example of how this concept was shaped already from the business owners. Now, the image of the Quaker man on to the label, they found that image and they said that this is the best image to use. They methodically said that this is the best image to use because why? It evokes trust. Because they understood the importance of image and value to the product. And out of that, they already had the success, trial and error, and then the success of their product, right? And they just said, well, advertisement is a surplus to get out how good we are. And so they went and they everywhere they could. And then even at the time, it was still at the time where horse-drawn, mind you, taking down banners and taking down advertisement and putting it up. This is another good example of the aspects of the determination and will of the American spirit. That work ethic there, that's something else. And then with the aspects of grape nuts was all about the mentality that science and health, this will improve your health line. And so grape nuts is still there, but it's not as prevalent, as, we go, it's to certain company, it probably is. But, the staying power and how influential it is into the aspects of how we think about diet and exercise and balancing our lives. You can a testament to, the grape nut and all this the different things, but the aspects, and then also with Kellogg, stuff like that. Well, the aspects of moderation and everything else. These concepts came from their background from these men. All right, so and then also with the aspects of Campbell soup. Now, Campbell soup is quite interesting. Now, Campbell soup is the colors, even though Andy Warhol, which, he was in itself using this whole idea of being part of counterculture. Now, to certain generation, other generations, the Campbell soup can mean something quite different. But but it's very a testament of time of how prevalent Campbell soup is to the American culture and American values about tradition, because Campbell soup came out of Camden, New Jersey, and then Cornell, the red and white, those are Cornell colors, and so they were showcasing the prestige of it, how good it is. That's one thing to be said. And then also, if I'm not mistaken, let me go back. Let me see. They in the 1900s or so, they had particular ads that were pertaining to children, and they had really, really cute little ads, vignette ads that say, "Oh, this is, hey, look, this is good enough. This is that, you can trust that, this is good and wholesome for your family, for your kids." And look, this is something that will attract the kid to look at and see. They are the forerunners of kid-centric products. There's something to be said about that. And see, also Coca-Cola, unfortunately, with the sign of the times of them losing their way, but Coca-Cola is another company that's very, very rich in history because it's been around since 1886. That is significant amount of time, and this company saw so many different changes. And it just simply started out from a Dr. Stith, and he was a pharmacist. He mixed up syrup and carbonated water. He wanted something along the lines of doing something like that. And he just mixed up that concoction with, to have for the aspects of something like an alternative to have. And the pharmacy, because the pharmacy at that time was seen as a local hub to be around, because you got everything you needed. And so that was another implement to have as a service. Hey, if you're getting what you need for your ailment, you can also have a treat here. And so, Coca-Cola. And then along the lines of, Keds is a long-running company, but Keds kind of is one of those things that is a really good example that the sign of the times, because it really became its own in the 80s and 90s and so forth. And it just, because especially with tennis shoes and stuff like that, marketing, with young kids and with their aspects, really make his money with that. But it just fell out, just like LA Gear. LA Gear is is a really good example of the aspects of it's very dated because it's only that worked at the time in the 90s with that aesthetic, you know. And then Levi Strauss, right? I'll end talking about no, well, first, okay. And another really good example to go back into how makes you question about the aspects of everything with being paid spokes or long paid spokes ad, or they there to inform you or entertain you. So if y'all want to check this out, so the Chase and Sanborn Hour. So particularly the Chase and Sanborn Hour with Edgar Bergen and Charlie McCarthy. Now Maxwell House was a sponsor for this show. So Maxwell House used the means in which, hey, we're going to continue to sponsor ourselves to get ourselves out there as far as presenting the aesthetic and understanding of how good our product is. And there's something to be said about that too. Now go back to Levi Strauss. Now, Levi Strauss, the whole reason for Levi Strauss Company to be formed in San Francisco at the time with was it this 1887 or around that time, the 49ers, right? That had to do with gold mining. So the company, the business person, he wanted to come up with, hey, come up with, let's get some working pants for these people out here that are gold mining. And then it spread around to Europe to be a symbol as that blue jeans are for the working man, right? Now, blue jeans as a concept of being fashionable, that didn't pick up until the 1960s when the aspects of the counterculture came more prevalent, and they started to revamp and change the concept of what jeans can mean to our culture. That's why, it's very interesting how advertising and culture can really shape images. And the Levi Strauss Company understood that, and that's why they had a lot of different ads to implement this, and that's why you see this whole concept of jeans, hobo chic, or that concept of the aspects of casual wear and high fashion are, pretty much there because of counterculture taking it on and it being showcased in the way that counterculture looks. What's the best way to do that? Advertising. All right, and then also with the aspects of chicklets, the long brand staying in company, that is associated with Santa Ana coming in and everything with the Alamo, and that equate for that and how that the staying power with that. All right, and then Gillette, now be the King, to be exact, his name is King, the owner, the creator of Gillette was King C. Gillette. And so how the story goes is that he was using a patented star razor. Now, the reason why he was using a star razor is at the time, there was a lot of razors where it was easy to cut yourself. And so the patented star razor he used, so it would help with that. Now, he did a lot of different things for trade, but he was begged with the question to find what can you find that works like excuse me, a corkscrew, to where it's something that is needed, for a necessity for society to use, and then he came up with the aspects of changing the way razors were used, and here we go with Gillette. Now, William B. Stout was, and I'll start out with that, of how when you find something that is needed to change, it implements the aspects of brand loyalty and of brands coming out and different companies coming out and brand loyalty, because this is a different example of that, and how that can reshape and how the implement of advertisement is impactful and powerful. So around the time with him, William B. Stout. Now, mostly mail carriers were, and then the war, of course, the war would say it was mail carriers who were in the business of using airplanes to get for that was what it was for. Well, that's what its use was for. Now, but he was also had the concept of, what if we have a small room for the passengers inside? We gotta just not only focus on this is just for business use. I mean, that we could probably use this for commercial use, and so Edsel Ford, to be exact, got behind on board, and then like gangbusters, the rest is history. All right, so cosmetics, right? Now, cosmetics and the aspects of everything is very interesting. And and then I'm gonna switch to my end point here. Now I'm gonna talk about travel and cigarettes, and then endpoints. All right, so make a long story short with that, let's start out is the aspects of, now the concept of beauty was quite different, because when cosmetics was first starting, because essentially it was for the aristocrat people who were very well off, who could afford to, and this meant that people who could travel and who were knew all about the styles of London and Paris, right? And so, in the ways in which cosmetics was presented, it was all about that. Looking very white, fair skin, porcelain skin, and rosy cheeks, and all of these things. Now it started to change towards the late 19th century because of why? Like I said, with when the wars came about, especially with World War I and so forth, the everyday woman started to come into the consuming power, and so things started to shift to where things started to become more of a convenient thing versus anywhere else, versus something that's very looking at high value costs or affluent or something, and that's quite interesting how that shift changed. Now the concept here started also to change with the aspects of image and beauty, throughout as the years went on. So in the 30s, it was all about, at that time, having that still looking youthful schoolgirl look, right? Now in the 50s and 60s, it was all about that model look, that new run Paris, all the way to Twiggy look chic of the 60s, looking worldly, world class, right? Now in the 70s and 80s, now here we go with the concept going back again. Now it was like, well, we already did this, and here in the previous generations, we're going to do this. We're going to sell you an experience. Now, why is this significant for me to bring up? Now, advertising gets a lot of flack and backlash because of advertising is to blame a lot of times for the aspects and the concepts of perpetuating or presenting unrealistic images. When in reality, these things should be brought into mind when you think and contribute advertising to the way body images are, women are, cultural value, right? It's merely up to you how you want to feel about something. If you don't like it, just keep it a buck and keep going. But at the same time, that's in the business of what advertising does. Advertising is, and this is a really good example because they said, well, now let's do something different. The way that we can do something different is to sell you an experience, sell you a story, right? And so that in itself creates a lot of, criticism in the aspects of how that story is being told. Because, there's certain stories that people relate to, and there's certain stories that people don't relate to. And then the aspects of models and the influence of models. Because in itself, when you think about this concept here, like if being a model was an easy profession, everybody would be able to do it. But in itself, some people conflict that. In itself, a model's job, in the essence of job, is to be a advertiser of something. And to a supermodel in itself, or that breaks the tier of it, is when a model proprietarily makes his money. That is money. I'm sorry. Their money. I meant in the concept of the business of itself, because being a model is a business in itself, because they are the visual vehicle in which to get you into buying something or what have you. All right, he or she, who are very successful and good at their job and do what they're paid to do, they are all about dispensing reality. They're a fantasy to where dreamlike, they're unreal, and they have to uphold that look. So that takes a lot of discipline, and that takes a lot of work to do so. And I think that should be thought about when we get into the concepts of that and the backlash. All right, so travel and everything. Now, I want to say about this. Now, I think a really good example of the aspects of that is, for instance, Route 66, okay? Now, Route 66 in its heyday, was a good means in which it showcased, and it was just a welcoming door for advertisers to just go towards, saying, hey, you want to take your family here, you want to go on the road, you want to have good times, hey, Route 66 can take you there. Because of why? And then all these picturesque sceneries really help to implement that too. And so I think that there's something to be said about the aspects of travel and ad travel to really get that visual concept going about that. And I don't know, those things really complement each other quite well, and it did, especially then when Route 66 was really very popular. Now, things that, as I say, with kegs and everything else, which is very important to see how things and how advertisement can work and not work, and products can and fall off and not fall off is the sign of the times. So they say they gave examples about the aspects of, specifically when you have the dated typeface, with the Victorian lithographs, that's very dated because where you get down to it is where ads and companies refuse to get out of the realm of what works, or what they're known, what they are essentially, what they like, or what they started out as, and they don't try to see things for what it is and how the way in which the world moves. But on the other hand of that, when they go too far left field and they alienate their customers, that's a problem too. Now, Budweiser and so many different companies, unfortunately, that went along the lines of it, go woke, go broke, which is a tagline now. They learned their lesson the hard way, that you have to read the room and you have to be respectful of your consumers who are actually buying this, and you just don't spit on them, because you will pay the price, because you're not being self-aware enough to know that that's not really reasonable or wise to do. All right, so cigarettes in itself is quite interesting of how that evolved itself into, what we see stuff today, because it started out in the 1634, where people who were in the business with tobacco and everything else, that morally, that and alcohol, morally, that was seen as something wrong, because it goes against Christian and Puritan values, and then it rolled along with the Civil War coming out. And I really didn't say with the concept of war, unfortunately, it's so hard and brutal, and brutality of war, that the concept of cigarettes and everything else, smoke breaks, and then that, and if I'm not mistaken, there are, the war culture in itself, it rewards people who smoke, and so it came back to where that was prevalent again, and there was rules and regulations with the aspects of how advertisers could do these things. And when you went to get especially with the Sherman Antitrust Act and everything, to rule with the rules and regulation, what you could show, what you could do, what you could not do. It's quite interesting with Bull Durham, and especially with the aspects of Duke University. Now, Duke University you spent advertisement in the aspects of talking about cigarettes, and they were one of the first to get the whole influencer or vignette slice of life idea that smoking is sophisticated, because look, these Ivy League people smoke, so hey, maybe you can have that sort of sophistication with yourself too. All right, so, and I'm going to end on this now. As with the cost, right? Now, the reason why I'm ending on this is because they say that you pretty much have to know, you gotta put your full gusto. You can't come in unexperienced if you want to proprietary yourself to be a company that is advocacy for something, that is using your advertisement to for world issues, because that in itself is, world issues are very serious subjects for most of the time, and it's something that's very complicated, and you shouldn't just in it yourself take it lightly. And so the Ad Council in itself was one of the ones to really get that foot pedal going, right? To modernize it more. But I will say that they were talking about how the government was really doing that, started that, and then you see all these other advertisers doing different things. But then back in the day with the aspects of advertising, hey, the Warbucks, parades here or something like that. And then leading on to the ad councils, who specifically are PSAs, to talk to you about very serious issues, change your concept about the reality situation of the products that are being used and tested. And the aftermath, a really good example of that with the ad council is a war on tobacco. Now there's been, especially, and then the war on drugs, all that. Because, when I was growing up, there's this ad, Rachel Lee Cook, she's going around, she said, hey, this is, she showcases an egg. It's very masterfully shot, like a scene from a movie. She's like, this is an egg. Alright, very pristine. This is your cracked egg. This is what happens on drugs. But some of them are cut. Some of them were cut, and some of them and sometimes they would just show that the full length ad. And so she goes around the whole room. She smashes plates. This is what it does to your friends, your family, and then you pretty much get the point that drugs destroy. Along the lines of the same thing, not it's different concepts, but you can see the point of saying, now with the legal use of drugs and alcohol, of the problems with that, especially when it was smoking ads, of how I can't speak anymore. My baby isn't in the NICU and all these kind of things, and that's really interesting. There's something else when the government or governmental ad council uses style to get your attraction, but at the same time, they are housed in the realms and the responsibilities to solely, show you what you need to understand and to be informed. Now, the government is not in itself something to rely on all the time. It's really good to be self-sufficient. There's a balance with that. But you take it for what it is. All right. So, but when you get in the business of companies who sell products, for instance, fashion companies or so forth, of cosmetics companies or so forth, who get in the business of being self-aware and being socially aware of something. Now, you got to do this to help this. Just, I would say, look, it looks convoluted. Most of the time it looks really convoluted because it's just comes across as very self-fulfilling, not something that's really grounds in something that you actually care about. And there's something to be said with that. Well, that's my take that I had with this book. I really enjoyed reading it, and I would like to know what you all think. Feel free to reach out to me, and the best way to do that is through email and, of course, YouTube. All the comments when I do get them, are greatly appreciated. And when I do get emails, it's greatly appreciated. I do read them, and I do respond to them. And hey, you know, you want to be highlighted on my show? You want me to read your comments on my show? I will do that. I've done it before. I did it I did it this past November. It's almost going on the year. I'll do that. I appreciate all of you. All right, so this reaches the end of the Harvard Night. Tune in, turn up, and definitely take care. Bye-bye for now.